So the nickname, tell me about the nickname. Where did that come from?
So I turned pro my senior year of high school. So when I turned pro, you start making some money, but not like what people perceive or whatever.
Right.
But my friends are all young. We're all kids. Nobody has any money. So they all thought I was getting rich racing or whatever. So there was a DJ in Miami named JT Money, right? So they thought, oh, let's name them. And it was two of my friends in Miami that came up with this. They heard this DJ on the radio, and everybody called me JT at the time, so they went with JT Money. Didn't really stick. Like, you really didn't hear it very much other than those two. And then when there was a rapper that came out early 2000s and had a couple of hits, and his name was JT Money. So then at that point, then they had already been saying it, and everybody kind of blew it off, and then it kind of stuck.
Okay, so you raced a lot domestically, but you also raced overseas quite a bit. What was your favorite race that you did overseas?
You know, it's tough because I did a lot of racing over there. I think I have, just in Europe, somewhere around 90 starts or something like that. Wow. So when you think about all of those were back and forth overseas flights, like I wouldn't stay back for those. I would come back. It's a lot of trips to Europe. And I have different ones for different reasons. I think the absolute coolest event, when you take into account the city and where the event was held and the people, I really liked, there was a race in Barcelona, which has kind of been discontinued. But it's just a beautiful city, and it was low pressure. The people that they brought in, I would typically be top 3, so that was always fun to have a chance to win. I think Bercy is an amazing event, and Bercy, they've since moved it to Lille, but it's always around Paris. Yeah. Just being in Paris alone, the crowd is out of their minds there, and it's been running for 30 years. Wow. So it's such a cool event on that level. It was tough because they'd always bring in guys like Chad Reed and James Stewart and these guys, so they were just better. You knew you weren't going to go there and win. Right. But that was a great event. I think the most historical and favorite events that I worked the hardest for were the German Supercross series. Okay. They were a little bit smaller than those other events, but they were the German national championships. So I wanted to win that series, and I put a lot of effort into it. And I met great friends in those series, and I think that's what made them probably my overall favorite. Is I can go back this fall and see 100 people that I haven't seen in a while, and I'll know them by name, and even though we have speak different languages, we can still converse and talk. And I raced that series 15 years in a row, so I know so many people there, and I know the cities, and I know just the culture, and those are memories that I wouldn't have without motocross racing. So yeah. You look back on all these things and money and all these things that, yeah, sure, that's all great, but the memories are irreplaceable, and the experiences that I got from motorcycles, it's hard to replace. Yeah.
So what's the difference, between racing domestically and abroad, and the culture? Like, is it any different?
It is. The racing here is, you're contracted to these teams, and it's very much like a job. It is, I'm sure, and I remember those days when I was a kid, it's glamorous, and you get kind of caught up in that. You're in a football stadium in front of all these people racing. But really, once you get past that and you kind of become a professional, you approach it as a job. You train all week and you prepare all off season to be at your absolute peak on Saturday night. And it doesn't matter if you're in a bull ring in middle of Texas, or you're in Anaheim Stadium in front of all those people, your goal is still the same. So if you approach it like that, you just learn to block out all the white noise. There's really, when you're on the track, you can't see the people around you. All you see is the track, and you're looking at your lap times, and you're trying to beat the lap before it and race the people around you. So that's the big difference. Is it was much more of a job here in the States, as far as trying to accomplish a goal, get results for your sponsors. When you go over to Europe, the atmosphere was much different. It wasn't, these were optional races, so you didn't really have to be there. Right. There's a lot more camaraderie with the riders because there's no pressure. Like, if you get first or last, yeah, maybe you made less money, but no one's going to be upset with you, or you didn't feel like you let everyone down. And then there's sightseeing and all that stuff. Yeah. In the U.S., it was kind of airport, hotel, go to the race, back to the hotel, and back to the airport. Weekend after
more
weekend.
Fun in Europe, would you say?
Of course, yeah. There's so much more to see and so much history, and just the racing here was much more about, those 20 laps on Saturday night. Everything was built around that, and every meal and every second of your training day was about that. Europe was about the experience and trying to make some extra money while you're doing it, but really trying to enjoy the opportunities that were given to you.
Right, enjoy what you're doing, and it is much more of a two-wheel lifestyle over there, I feel like.
Right, and the fans are, by culture, they're just much more enthusiastic.
Yeah.
Fans here, it's not that their passion's less, it's just the way that they
Express
portray
it,
that.
yeah.
So it's just a completely different environment, and the cities here I'd been to, we run the same typical circuit year after year after year. So I'd been to all these cities before a bunch, and so there wasn't a lot left to see and new experiences. You go to Europe, there's always a new race popping up in a different country or different city. So each time it was like, oh, I've never been there before. I've never been to Romania before. I'm going to go there. I've never been to Moscow before. I'm going to go there. So it was like always something new, always a new opportunity. And you kind of check the list off of all these cities that you grew up reading about in your history books and in school, never dreamed you would go to. But now you're being paid well to go see these places. Yeah, it's a pretty awesome opportunity that I see these kids now, younger kids that, and I try to steer them the right way, and some listen, some don't. You say, hey man, I know maybe they're not gonna offer you what you want to go, but you'll wake up in 20 years and wish you had gone. So I'm just telling you now, if you can work it out, get the best deal you can and just go for the experience, go see the world. People would kill to be paid to go see the world for the experience you're getting. So that's one thing I feel so fortunate about, was I was able to make money, see these places, and perform in front of all these people doing something you loved anyway. Right. So it's just this kind of intersection of a lot of things that are pretty awesome in themselves.
Did you realize it at the time?
I did. I really tried hard in my when I was 17, 18, 19 to get opportunities, because they weren't beating my door down. I had to go search them out. And I knew that if I basically just told them, I'll go for free. Don't pay me anything, just get me to the race and I'll prove myself. And and as the years went, I started winning, and then you have people calling you and emailing you and whatever, like, because they know your rates are reasonable, you can perform at a high level. Americans, luckily for us, Americans are a big draw over there because we practice Supercross so much. Right. So it was one of those things where I kind of invested in myself and said, I don't even want any money, I just want the chance. And I went over there and improved and worked on what I was bad at. And I think there are less kids that are willing to do that now. They kind of say, well, I'm not going for that, and I'm
right.
Trust me, if you're doing the work, it'll come to you. Just give it a shot. And it falls on deaf ears sometimes, but that's the way I did it anyway.
It's hours of practice. It's hours on the track.
Right. I just wanted the opportunity. I really, really wanted to travel. That was what in high school, I was like, man, if I could go see this or that would be amazing. And I saw the opportunity that was there. I was like, that's a way to go do it. Yeah. So I didn't know it was going to work out, that I would one day be paid to go back or whatever. But I said, if this is the only time I get to go, I'm going to find a way to get to go now. So I would go. I would call these promoters and just pester them until they basically said sure, because they got tired of answering the phone.
Right.
But then you take that opportunity and you work your butt off to make sure you're ready. And then 2 years later, they're the one calling you until you won't stop answering. You have to answer the phone. So it's it's cool on that level to look back. You don't think about it much now because it changed so much, but I can remember those early days being in my parents' house. Nobody had cell phones then. Right. On my my bedroom phone, calling overseas, and my parents were like, who are you calling? I'm like, I'm just trying. I have a plan.
I'm hustling.
I have a plan. Yeah. So it's just funny as the world's changed so much.
Okay, so speaking of 2017, we've looked at the new gear, but looking forward as far as racing, what do you see for Supercross for 2017?
It'll be interesting. There's a lot of chips that still have to fall as far as people moving around and different teams and a lot of announcements. And you kind of start to get a picture of what's going to happen. But until riders' current contracts expire, they won't really say where they're going for the next season. So a lot of that's going to hinge on where people end up. I still think you're going to have your main players. Ryan Dungey will be back and healthy. Ken Roxon's most likely changing teams. So that'll be a big transition for him and how he adjusts to his new team. Eli Tomac will be back. And those are kind of your main three that you kind of have to look at. But then you have the guys like Cooper Webb moving up. He'll be on teammates with, Chad Reed, who's, veteran now, but one of the legends of the sport. Where does James Stewart end up? Never can count him out. It's been a rough few years for him, but he still has the talent to be one of the guys. So I think it's really going to come down to Roxon and Dungey. That's how I see it playing out.
Okay.
But man, there's a lot of variables with that too. Dungey's never really had a lengthy injury, which he has now.
Right.
Neck injuries. While it wasn't deathly serious, it's still a little bit scary, and I think Ken Roxon gained a lot of confidence in his absence. Yeah. So it's going to be fun. I love when things get shaken up. Coming into 2016, there really wasn't a lot of changes. A lot of guys stayed on the same team and on the same bikes, and you almost knew what to expect. And I predicted Dungey would have it fairly easy, and he did. And there were just a lot of things that, when everything stays static, you can kind of predict this.
Right.
The results are going to stay the same as well. But when everything gets shaken up and Dungey's hurt and Roxon changes, and that adds variance, and that's what makes racing fun, is the unpredictability. So I'm hoping that there's a little bit of flair from the old guys. I'm hoping Reed and Stewart can kind of step back up and be players again.
Yeah,
and then the guys that are in their prime are going to bring it. So.
Yeah. Do you think Dungey's injury is going to affect him for next year? Or do you think that's not going to be an issue?
I don't think it'll have a profound effect. I think it's, his crash was in May, or for the 1st of June. So I think he has plenty of time to heal up, and he'll get all of his work in and all that. But really, it's the first time he's had any interruption, and and the way we look at racing, it's a momentum thing. This ball keeps rolling, and you get more and more fit, more and more confident as your seasons roll by without injury. So he's going to have to deal with that for the first time and get that kind of going again and get back to the confidence level he was at.
Right.
So ideally, you want all these guys to be at their absolute peak coming into January.
Yeah.
Probably not going to happen. There'll be guys that get hurt in December training because everyone's just pushing the edge to get better. If I had to sit here and pick a guy today, I'd probably say that Dungey wins again. I just think he has too many things that are on his side. Yeah, he's in his physical prime. He's on the same bike he's been on. He's on, basically everything that's been successful for him. I would say that Roxon would be maybe the favorite, but he's changing bikes and teams to a brand new motorcycle, and that always has unique challenges. Right. You don't really know how that bike's going to react. The team doesn't have a ton of R&D on the new bike yet, so it's kind of a learning process for both of them, but it's exciting. I mean, for me, I'm like a kid in a candy store at the first race. There's so much what if.
Right.
Halfway through the season, that what if starts to fade away a bit.
Right.
But it seems like every year, even those guys that you counted out, they've been kind of in the gym for the last 3 months, riding every day, and they've got their confidence back, and all these egos kind of clash at the first race. So
right.
I'm excited about it.
There's always the surprise element in there.
Yeah, all these guys have had so much time to work on their game that you're wondering, okay, who took the next step up and who was maybe a little bit lazy and is going to really struggle this season, and all these questions that from basically October 15 until January 4, whatever the date is, we don't get any answers. There's this 3-month gap of training that all these questions start surfacing, and you hear rumors about this guy's going faster than this guy and all these kinds of things, but until we really see that gauge drop in January, it's a lot of speculation. But that's what makes it fun. That's why questions like this get answered, is people want to know, and it's bench racing. That's just like me sitting around not in front of a camera talking with buddies, we don't know. And the riders, they don't know either. I think that's one of the questions I get asked a lot is, how'd you think today was going to go, at the first race of the season?
Right.
And you don't know. You've put in all this work. I mean, thousands of hours and thousands of miles on your bicycle and thousands of laps and all these things, hoping that you show up and you're at your best on that day, but you don't know. There's no way to know.
Right.
It's just a guessing game.
How does that first race, I mean, as a former racer, how much pressure is on that first race? How much does that matter for the rest of the season?
More than it should.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, realistically, the first race counts just as much as every other race.
Right.
There's no more importance on it, but there's such a spotlight on it, and there's been so much hype and anticipation and a lack of racing leading up to it that you do feel a ton of pressure. it's probably unneeded, and 2 months later, nobody even remember. Like, oh, who won? And I'm one. I don't even, seriously. We had that conversation. I can't even remember because it didn't even matter. It's just the same. It's just another race along the line. But leading up to it, it's every rider on that starting line will be a ball of nerves, just because you just want to come out and show the team that hired you that you made the right choice, and you want to establish your place in the the peloton there. So yeah, it's a pressure cooker for riders for sure.
So if they don't do well in the first race, does it affect the races following?
It can, but really most of the guys, if the first weekend goes bad, you just kind of write it off and say, because Anaheim 1 always is weird. Weird results, riders are too nervous, guys trying too hard. Everyone goes in there thinking they're going to be the champion that year. It's realistically, not going to happen for most people. But they always think that. You've put in all this work and like, why can't it be me? And guys ride over their heads and do stupid stuff. So there's a lot of guys that go to the track on Monday morning and say, okay, start over, start of the season, all the pressure's off now. So you find a bit of both of that. The guy that won though, he's like, yeah, we're here. It's
he's like,
go
I'm bringing
time.
it.
Yeah.
We got this.
It's funny the different perspectives that all come out of that first race.